Hey everyone, it's Dr. Rick, founder of Herbal 411. And today's unboxing is going to be on this thing. This is a fruit. This is actually a piece of fruit called a pomelo. And it comes from about the same family as a grapefruit. But look at the size of this thing. I was shopping at H Mart with my wife, and we were getting our usual things at that Asian grocery store in Hoffman Estates. And I love pomelos. They are supposed to be in season, and FYI, it's not season, and this is not locally grown. So you know that it probably had to be picked when it was green, and it probably had to be picked from a faraway place, which by its own rights does cause some problems. The longer something is shipped, the less nutrient is in it. I mean, it looks okay. I can't really smell anything. I don't think there's a waxy cover. No, it's just a mesh cover. But the longer it stays in shipment, the less the nutrients or there's polyphenols that are found in many different plants, especially with regards to color. And the longer they stay off of the tree or limb or out of the ground, the less that you'll have when you open this up and take advantage of it. The other thing is if it's picked when it's green, the likelihood is it hasn't been able to mature. So other things will also start to fade. It might still be the same, but it might also go bad really fast. Anyway, this is huge. This is really expensive. It's 15 bucks to pay for this thing. I'll probably actually have to tear it apart outside of this video. Otherwise, it would take me all day to get through that. And this is a bag of sugar. So this bag of sugar, like some people will say, this is fructose too. But I did not have any high fructose corn syrup, so it is ubiquitous in a lot of things that you buy. Highly processed, high fructose corn syrup, and there's a total difference. You know, it's like the adage, a calorie is a calorie. So a calorie of tar is equal to a calorie of meat, is equal to a calorie of broccoli. That's not true. Well, I guess as far as heat thermodynamics go, it is true. The measurement of heat is probably about the same based on a Bong calorimeter, but the value of a real food versus a highly processed food substitute is totally different. In fact, there's a lot of fiber in this. There's a lot of other polyphenols and cofactors that come into your gut when you take this in whole food unprocessed. There's a lot of bad side effects to this because it immediately gets into the bloodstream from your stomach. And I wanted to talk about this too. In my last video, which I'll put down below, I've been trying to push bioenergetics, and it's a really boring subject, but I think it's kind of cool. And even when it comes to fatigue, it comes to depression, when it comes to heart failure, I think a lot of what I try to build up on with my patients as far as exercise, nutrition, sleeping, mindful practice, spirituality, is all based on the mitochondria. It comes down to a cellular level, and you might not want to watch this, but this is the science of it, and hopefully this is not too far-fetched for you, but this is something called a mitochondria. It sits in each cell, except for the red blood cell. Every cell in the body has mitochondria, thousands to millions of them. And the mitochondria is used to make ATP. If you remember from biology in grade school or high school, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is the body's energy. And you can have it through fat oxidation, that's called beta oxidation. You can have it through glycolysis, that happens in the cell cytoplasm. And you can have it through to the TCA cycle, the Krebs cycle, which happens inside this mitochondria. There are some factions of science now, I shouldn't say factions, but there's deep diving into randomized controlled trials all surrounding this thing called a mitochondria, and it's being determined that this is more important than the nucleus of your cells, especially when it comes to metabolic syndrome, disease, cancer, problems with immunity. So I'm going to leave it at there, but I drew this to show you that in essence, what this thing does is it takes substrates from your food. The food gets absorbed in the stomach digests stuff, turns it into liquid food, and then puts it through the lining of the small intestine, and it gets taken up by the liver, and the liver just disposes of it in different places: energy, stored fat, hormones. So that's the basics, but it's all responsible. All this is responsible for all that. And if all these mitochondria in every cell of your body get any kind of substrate or building block, it'll try to metabolize the building block. So let's call it substrates. And you probably know most of the substrates are fat and glucose. That's the ones that we talk about all the time. You can all use protein too, but that's another topic. So fat and glucose, those are the big evils, I guess, of today. So the high carb community, or the plant-based community, loves glucose. And we use glucose as a source of fuel that goes into the mitochondria, and the mitochondria makes a whole bunch of ATP. That should be an arrow going up. The fat can also go into the mitochondria and also be used as a substrate to make ATP. So that's the basic way that we get energy from our food sources. Now, with the ATP, you have to also exercise on this part, that's output or demand, because if you have too much substrate, fuel, not enough demand, exercise, you'll have a backup of stuff. This thing doesn't just make ATP all the time and store it. If there's no call for it, that's that proverbial seesaw. If there's too much substrate, not enough demand, you're going to have an accumulation of stuff. When this starts to accumulate things, you develop actually ROS, reactive oxygen species. That's oxidation. And when you guys all hear about antioxidants, blueberries, CoQ10, all these resveratrol, all these antioxidants are theoretically supposed to take care of ROS. That's probably another video, because I don't think that all these things get into the mitochondria. Maybe CoQ10, which I love, but these other things might not get there and might not even get digested. So bottom line is that this cycle of energy going to utilization, energy going to utilization of ATP, that happens all the time, unless you're old, don't exercise, have disease. So what sometimes happens is this thing doesn't work properly, called a mitochondria. And I'm getting to a point, but this thing is full of fructose. I don't have any high fructose corn syrup, but just take it that this is high fructose corn syrup. So this is high fructose corn syrup, and that's real fructose from a plant. Yes, they're both fructose, but one fructose is not equal to the other. So when I eat this, it comes with fiber, vitamin C, and a couple other coenzymes and other things that go into the stomach and into the bloodstream. So it does take a while for me to peel this apart. That's why I'm going to do it at another unboxing, or I'll maybe segment it and put it at the tail end of this and show you how hard it is to open that thing. This, I just have to pour it out and drink it, or put it in my mouth, and it'll liquefy with saliva. It gets absorbed immediately. There's two totally different fructoses here. And no question, the bottom line is when you eat fructose, it's not a good fuel. We actually make our own fructose a little bit, but it's not a great fuel, because when the fructose gets presented instead of glucose and fat, when fructose gets presented, it gets into, and it's super fast as well, it gets super fast into the bloodstream, into the stomach, into the bloodstream, and into the mitochondria. So when fructose goes through and bypasses all the checks and balances and gets super fast absorbed, well, when that happens, you make a whole bunch of ATP super fast. What happens when you make ATP? You will have ROS. But our body is used to slow ATP, slow glycolysis and Krebs cycle, slow beta oxidation. When it's super fast, something happens. You get a ton of ROS. You make fast ATP, you get a ton of reactive oxygen species, a spike of it suddenly, and our body doesn't like that. And the mitochondria can't handle that. So what do the mitochondria do with all that reactive oxygen species, which is essentially, think of you doing a 30-minute bike and your legs get super sore and painful. All that hydrogen ion, which most people think is lactic acid, it's not lactic acid, it's hydrogen ion. That hurts. Well, think of the mitochondria going through a really fast burn, and suddenly all these little guys, like this little sad guy here, gets a whole bunch of hydrogen ion. When the hydrogen ion, or reactive oxygen species, accumulates, it shuts down the production and stops or lowers ATP. It doesn't stop ATP like cyanide, it lowers ATP. And what happens when you lower ATP? No energy, fatigue, immune system sucks, digestion doesn't work properly, your brain doesn't fire, you forget stuff, can't sleep, can't have an erection, so everything slows down. Anything that we are dependent on as far as ATP and energy doesn't work as well. So usually what happens with that, you decrease your activities because you don't want to do anything, no energy. Decreased demand usually means more of this stuff starts to back up even further. I mean, initially you might decrease your appetite, which is good, but after a while, you're going to keep on backing things up. And then if you're already on a bad diet, standard American, like more stuff like this, or say saturated fat, bad saturated fat, you will not be able to recover this. And I put over here has another description. This is high fructose corn syrup. This is the small intestine, or at least part of the small intestine. This is plant fructose. What usually happens with high fructose corn syrup, it gets into the gut immediately, gets absorbed immediately and put into the liver. And those of you who have elevated liver enzymes, you get a fatty liver. That's the first step to something called NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And then that's a step into cirrhosis. I mean, you don't want that. Then that's a step into liver transplant team, or you put your name on it if you get accepted. But you really want to stop that, but to stop that, you want to decrease on your ingestion of things with high fructose corn syrup and start reading your labels. You'll be really surprised. Versus plant fructose, like in that, there's no question that's going to be a lot of calories, but I can't eat all of it, and I'll probably spread it out as my dessert, maybe for the next couple of dinners. But that's after eating a very well-balanced, healthy diet, Mediterranean/keto. But the plant fructoses, actually, when they're with the fibers and all those cofactors, the gut lining can take, if the gut lining is properly functioning, the gut lining can actually neutralize about, let's say, 20 grams of high fructose. Not high fructose corn syrup, but fructose. And so if you don't have that much, you got it. The gut neutralized it, and it just either, I guess I should talk about the neutralization part. You either poop it out or you decrease the effect of the fructose on the mitochondria as it gets into the bloodstream. So let's just think of it, to make it easy, as the gut neutralizes the fructose from the plants and makes you poop things out. Well, this is good unless you have leaky gut. If you have leaky gut where some of these have holes, then you can't defend yourself against the fructose. It goes into the bloodstream and it ends up doing the same thing. If it's in high volume, same thing as high fructose corn syrup. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I just wanted to explain to some of my listeners and my patients that this is totally different from this. So although the measurement as far as the American Nutrition Panel will probably say 7 grams and about a teaspoon of this, 7 grams, that's not the same. This thing has way too many blowback side effects. This has very good positive effects. Satiety, happiness, vitamin C. Oh, vitamin C also neutralizes the fructose from plant, which it's a built-in mechanism. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of an idea. Please put any comments down below. This is, welcome to my backyard. That's a lake in Bartlett somewhere. This is my deck. This is the pomelo that I bought at H Mart. I tell you, this stuff is shiny. It's plastic coating. I'm sure there's also some kind of preservative too. And this is the danger of buying fruits. Preservative sprayed on the outside or something to make it last. Careful. That's why it's always better if you're gonna that you buy locally. If you eat the harvest of the season, the fruits are not gonna be the harvest of November. So I'm gonna try to cut into this just to start it. It's about 1 inch thick as far as the skin. I'll show you. I just cut all the way around, and well, it smells good. So you see why I didn't want to do this all in my studio. All right, well, that's one piece. You can see how thick that is. I usually leave the second half for when I'm peeling this open, but man, and that's how big it is. So take a look at that. The skin, I see there's a little part where you can see the, uh-oh, there's a bee. Oh no, you can smell what's going on. Get out of here. Now, what I want to do to figure out if it's fresh is try to separate the two halves. As I usually go to the center of this thing, where the stem was, my second workout. Ugh. And that's how it looks, kind of like a grapefruit. With something this big, ended up with something this big, and that's what we're going to do as far as the pulp. That's how that looks if it's not too bleached out. Oops, and that is that. Oh, shoot. 1, 2, 3. It's crunchy, but you can tell it was shipped. It's not the burst of flavor I was expecting. It's okay. If it's lacking that sweetness, then maybe the fructose level is decreased. That's the beauty, if you can see that. A lot of vitamin C, some fructose, and then a whole bunch of fiber. Oh, I'm being surrounded by bees now. So, Dr. Rick signing off. Hopefully this helped. If it did help, give me a thumb up. Otherwise, subscribe to the channel for my next unboxing.